So I'm scrolling through Facebook yesterday and came across a post and did a little bit of a double take here. I'm going to bring it up so our YouTube people can see what I'm talking about. This is a post that you put up, Dave.
Yeah. That was, it's election season. It's upon us. And among the local measures coming out, it's Measure A is a biggie, right? That's Mayor Darrell Steinberg, friend of the show, Master of Crows. Is
I never do it.
That was an elderly crow I just he's trying to push through a third round after Kevin Johnson tried at least twice, I think, a strong mayor initiative, and this one's called Measure A. So he's starting out with an ad campaign through email. I looked at the email. It's the top of it reads, "Meet the diverse coalition supporting Measure A." So Darrell Steinberg wants to make it look and feel like it's a diverse coalition.
Sure, right.
And you see the picture there, right? It's like all of these. There's a.
It looks like a diverse group of people.
It's the after school special photo, right? It's
Yeah.
like you have the Black woman and the Asian woman and the Pacific Islander woman and the Native woman and the Latina woman and the Sikh man and
the
someone
tall guy
wearing hijab and the tall guy and the short one and the person in a wheelchair and it's like, and the trans person. It's like, hey, let's grab all these people and just jam them into one photo.
Wait,
right.
so the email said meet the diverse coalition who's behind Measure A?
Yeah, and that's the first thing you see. There's a little paragraph above it that just says stuff like, "A broad and growing coalition supports Measure A, representing the wonderful diversity of Sacramento." And I'm looking at this email. It came out around 12:30 yesterday afternoon. And I'm like, I know a lot of people in Sacramento, and I don't recognize a goddamn person in that picture. So I started poking around, and I did a quick little search on like Google Images, and I found that this is in fact a stock image for diversity. If you're trying to convey diversity,
it's a stock image for diversity.
Absolutely incredible. So wait, if you just Google like diversity, does this come up?
Yeah, Google like diversity stock photo in Google Images, and it will very quickly come.
Hang on, I'm gonna test this theory real quick to see how far down you have to look. Let's see here. What am I Googling? Diversity
stock image.
Diversity stock image.
Then Google image that. I'm not sure how far down it is, but it came up pretty fast.
I mean, at least I will say this.
Top left there. See it? You've scrolled now. I don't know. But I found it. It was there. There it is.
Yeah. You're right. It's right here. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have to scroll down to the bottom of the page to find it. So at least they didn't take
the very first one.
Yeah, like at least it's not the very first one if you Google diversity stock image.
Are we really trying to give them credit for stuff? Are we like, well, at least they didn't choose the first one. At least they didn't choose the one where they all had their hands in together, like they were about to go team. Like,
right. But this was maybe worse, I think.
Yeah,
that's a little. Yeah,
I mean, they're all. Yeah, there's a whole show we could do on diversity stock photos, probably.
Yes.
But one thing I will say is political campaign 101. Don't put diversity stock images into your campaign. Like someone's going to find out. It took me, I probably found this and posted about it within 5 minutes of getting that email.
At least go to like page 4.
No, not even that. If you are doing something, especially something hyperlocal, this probably could have been okay it would have still not taken people that long to find it. But like, these people probably live in the United States, right? So you can't make the argument this is like a national campaign that like none of these people maybe are in favor of this, right? But this is a local campaign. So much like Dave, the first thing that a lot of people are going to do when you say meet is to look and see who it is. Like I was like, okay, where's Cassandra Jennings? Where's Chet Hewitt? Where's Jim Gonzalez? Like where are the people who I know
Deborah
who are in favor
Odo-Kent.
of this? Like, right? Like I'm expecting to see the faces that I know. And when you look down there and I'm like, I don't know everybody in Sacramento, but I've never seen anybody in this photo. And so what's really funny is I shared Dave's post inside the Sacramento Sister Circle, and the very first comment was someone who said, can anyone tag anyone in the pic? Seriously, like, who hired these people, right? And then the next comment is, who are these people, right? Because it's a small city and somebody should be able to know you, right? Like somebody should be able to tag you in the photo. And so, you know, I'm working with the No on Measure A campaign. So shout out to us because our website, which is No Way Measure A, has actual pictures of people that you know. And it lists out like why we're opposed to Measure A, right? And there's a whole place where you can come and you can actually join the diverse coalition of people opposing Measure A. So I was just like, are you just trying to lose, or did you just want to set up our next campaign post? Like, I'm really confused here because this is just so outrageous.
Oh, dude, this is an absolute home run for the Measure A campaign in my mind. This is an incredible.
I'm dying to know who sent that email out. And I'm sorry if I've affected you professionally for sharing that. But
I'm not, because this is your diversity leader. This is the type of you know, effort that is put in by somebody who is claiming that they want to lead on equity and that they want to champion solid equity issues, is that they're not even willing to show the actual, you know, non-white faces of the people who are supporting this. Instead, they're purchasing stock photos and referring to them in this way. Like it.
Mm-hmm. He's using, you know, the mayor is using the same political committee that he used to fight against putting money into our schools, Measure G. So, I mean, this is where Daryl's coming from here. One thing I'll say is this got so much action. I didn't expect it to. I was just like, oh, that's funny. And I posted it on Twitter and Facebook. It got so much action that there was a Google alert that came up for my name because of the tweet. Because thousands and thousands of people saw it.
I love it. That's amazing, because that's the way it should be, Dave.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, so there you go, Daryl. Round one goes to the images.
Yeah, gotta work a little harder than that, man.
Yeah,
a little harder than that.
And like maybe actually show the faces of the people who are actually supporting this instead of just purchasing photos from the interwebs.
Or maybe just abandon the fucking campaign.
That too. I mean, it's never too late to just be like, you know what? We change our mind.
This is obviously a bad idea. And every day it becomes more obvious that it is a bad idea.
All right. Well, this show is not technically this episode. We're going to be talking about a little more state level stuff, and I'm glad we got to take a moment to really dive into one of the things that brightened our days a little bit as the skies cleared up. Thank you for that laugh, Daryl.
All right. Well, you guys want to get going?
Sure.
All right.
Voices, the things they said. Voices, some from those dead. All the voices heard. Voices, things we say. Voices, they're in your head. All the voices heard.
Hello, everyone. You have Kempa.
And Skylar.
And Flo. And we don't have Shannon.
No Shannon, but for a good reason today. She's on vacation. She is out at Dillon Beach and sharing beautiful pictures of like her husband dancing to music in a hot tub overlooking the sea. So we're not too mad about it.
Yeah.
No.
We're a
I
little
watched-
jealous, but not mad.
A little bit.
I watched that video a number of times this afternoon. I
very
loved every
pleasing.
second of it.
Yeah.
It is very pleasing. Yeah.
I like his short trunks too.
I like his short trunks combined with the fact that he's wearing a hoodie in a hot tub.
Mm-hmm. There's sort
it's all
of peach-colored
fantastic.
trunks. It's very nice.
It's all fantastic.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see it, Shannon, when you accept my follow on Instagram.
It's been 5 minutes and she still hasn't.
5 minutes and she still hasn't done this. I don't know
Ridiculous. Outrageous. Yeah, we're
Probably
going to have to convene an emergency voices meeting after we tape this to get this
this
sorted
will not
out.
stand in the Voices Co-op.
how.
So today I thought, for whatever reason, today didn't feel like there were like 30 million A1 stories happening at once. So I thought it would be good for us to take a step back and start looking ahead to November. If you are a Californian, you have probably gotten this in the mail. The 2020, I guess it's called the Official Voter Information Guide. And this only has the state propositions, correct?
Yes.
And there are 12 this election, which is kind of, a lot. There's always a lot in this state.
The county one should be out sometime in the next couple of weeks.
Okay. And I don't think there are any ballot measures countywide, or at least I looked at the site and I couldn't find anything, but I know there are 3 measures in the city. As we've already talked about tonight, Measure A, Strong Mayor. And then also the real rent control one.
Yeah.
And
There's
then
a
the other
C.
one is just kind of sort of an admin thing that's just
Yeah.
like, hey, COVID happened. We need more time to redistrict for 2020.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we thought that we would go through every one of the propositions and kind of just give the official Voices River City acerbic commentary and opinion.
The takes,
Yeah.
the perfect takes.
The
It's
perfect
why
takes.
it's why you listen. We're dishing them up today.
Yeah, this is it. We can't. What I love doing every election, especially now that you have mail-in, is the election parties where, a week or two before everyone gets together and you if you drink, you have some wine. If you smoke, you
Or a
have
White
some
Claw.
weed or claw. If you do neither, you enjoy a snack and, LaCroix, and you end up just talking through everything on the ballot. And it's always very fun. Obviously, it's the age of COVID right now, and we can't do that. So this is our election party, at least as far as the propositions go.
Yeah.
Let's do this one by one.
All right.
All right.
14. How do we want to do this? Does somebody want to read the summary out, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is it just authorizes Bond's continuing stem cell research in California.
Yeah. So in the mid 2000s, or was it early 2000s, George W. Bush made it illegal to do research through stem cells.
Right.
And that's a very dumb thing to do. And it was sort of
Based more or less purely on the fact that stem cells come from fetal tissue. And
sure. Yeah. And a lot of the religious right was against it. Yeah.
right, for that reason.
And the state of California was like, well, that's very not smart. And we could actually save lives through stem cell research. So we're going to fund it ourselves. This is another round of it because they're running low on money. This is a $5.5 billion in bonds.
Mm-hmm.
What are our thoughts on this? Do we want to fund more research for stem cells?
I would say yes. I'm a yes on this.
That's my knee-jerk response. Well, I guess we'll let the expert go last, Flo. But my knee-jerk response is the same because, any amount of research, I don't think there's a price tag you can put on saving someone's life. There was a really great piece in one of the dailies in the state in which a woman who had suffered from cancer basically lived because of something that came out of stem cell research. And again, I don't know how you put a price tag on that. We live in in the worst iteration of capitalism, as I say all the time, and the way that that is manifested in our healthcare system is just, it's beyond the pale. So anything we can do to sort of push back on that, in my opinion, is a great thing, even if it is $5.5 billion.
Like my thing on it, like my reaction to this is even more simple, which is that if the opposition to the bill to something good like stem cell research is simply like, but how are we going to pay for it? I'm not hearing that in 2020. Like clearly, how are we going to pay for it is a fallacious argument 100% of the time, and it gets used for any fucking reason. If that's the main opposition to the thing, then I'm not here for it.
The only thing that gave me pause was the guy that is like the face against it is actually on the board of this like organization that is doing this research. But the more I dove into it, the more I realized, like, look at this. The University of California Board of Regents is for it. Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research, the Latino Cancer Institute, Sickle Cell Disease Foundation of California, and I don't care what Governor Gavin Newsom thinks. But like, these are some good groups that are saying, hey, yeah, we should put some money and some weight behind this.
And I mean, I think it's important also to just like explore a little bit of why, folks are, in opposition. And I mean, as you mentioned, like the main opposition arguments are about money, and about the cost of this, given that, it's a bond. And so we're basically borrowing the money and then having to pay it back, which I do understand. The challenge, of course, is that, I mean, I think they probably could have done this, but with an annual allocation, the challenge from the general fund, the challenge, of course, is that often those are set up as a percentage. It's really hard to set up as a fixed amount. And so then if the general fund goes down, that money fluctuates year by year. So that's one of the things that makes a bond attractive. So I do think that it's really important when we consider the fiscal impact of something, that yes, we will be paying for this for the next 30 years or so, but also when it comes to our research, we really don't want research to be beholden to corporate interests. So we want it to
Absolutely.
be, I mean, research is a public good, and so when we think about the things that we should be funding from public funds, one of them is always the things that help to benefit everyone, and the things that would be often prohibitively expensive for companies to do on their own without them then having to engage in probably unscrupulous practices to regain that funding, aka pharmaceutical companies sometimes, right, chasing after dollars to be able to fund their research and development, and it not always be in alignment with the best interest of what we need to research or what's needed for medical development. So I am usually in favor of spending public dollars to be able to do research, because otherwise you don't always get what we need.
Yeah, if profit is your motive, that can really bastardize the process. And one of Jeff Sheehy's main arguments is it's not making a profit, and I don't give a fuck,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay. Respectfully, Mr. Sheehy, fuck off.
Yeah.
Not
Okay.
15.
Prop 15. The business property taxes. We've talked at length on this one.
Yeah, so they want to
episode.
fund public schooling, and that's schooling on multiple levels from elementary up through city college, by changing around the way that we tax commercial property.
So that Disneyland is not paying what it paid whenever they bought that parcel of land,
Right.
100 years ago or whatever.
I'll go first. Strong yes. I'm all for this.
Same.
Like, no question.
Yeah, and we had Sacramento DSA's, the Electoral Committee chairs on, and they spoke at length on this, and I think they gave a very strong and convincing argument. This is a yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
Moving on.
Well, should we do like a quick explanation of like what the change is? I mean, not like super long, but just so basically the way that we tax commercial properties right now is that we tax them based on the value of their property when they bought it versus and not what their property is currently worth. So this law would change that around. It there's another few small things, like it wouldn't affect businesses that are worth less than $3 million.
Correct.
And there's like, there's some like, they take away some taxes on like commercial, like building tools, like tractors and shit.
Right. But generally speaking, it's focusing on on properties that are worth more than $3 million.
Right.
So this is not, the argument often is, what about the small businesses? What about the mom and pop? Like,
right.
I think 3 million is a solid, threshold.
Right. Totally.
We can address this. So.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, let's keep it moving here.
And I will also link in the show notes to the episode that we spoke on Prop 15 for this too. But thank you too for talking about it, because this is not how my brain works. So thanks for picking up that one. Prop 16.
Prop 16. Woo, woo, woo.
Now this is about restoring affirmative action in the state of California.
This allows us to actually talk about race and ethnicity and diversity as a factor. If you want to talk about what it means to actually do real equity work, you have to be able to talk about race, California. Your whole colorblind policies for the last however many years from Prop 209 are, I was going to say 20 plus, and then I was like, I don't know the exact number, but it's been a long time. It doesn't make sense, Ward Connerly. It never made sense, okay? Whereas my shirt from Michigan said, race is a factor because racism is a factor, period.
Right.
Yeah,
my favorite with this one is even in the guide, like the for and against arguments, like if you just scan them in this, it's like old racist arguments from like 20 years ago are going on in this. Like, yeah, it's pretty wild. It's like all the same, like it should be based on merit and how hard people are willing to work versus their race and whatnot.
Politicians want to strip our Constitution of its prohibition on discrimination and
who does this fucking sound like?
Based on race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin. They want to play favorites. If there's anything that should be fundamental in our society, it's that the state should treat all Californians equally. This is some state of Jefferson fucking bullshit.
For sure. 100%. Yeah.
Oh
yeah, if you're like confused or you feel like on the fence about this, just read the arguments against it and it will it'll clear it up for you real quick.
I love these two arguments because these are great. The first is discrimination of this kind is poisonous. I absolutely love it. It will divide us at a time when we desperately need to unite.
Get fucked.
Oh my God.
They think they can fixes in quotes, past discrimination against racial minorities and women by discriminating against other racial minorities and men who are innocent of any wrongdoing.
As a man, that's true. A man innocent of any wrongdoing.
Punishing innocent people will only cause a never-ending cycle of resentment. The only way to stop discrimination is to stop discriminating. You can't make
Incredible.
This shit up. Oh my gosh, you can't make it up.
That's like some shit that they were saying in like American History X. Isn't that basically, they have like a conversation in that movie where like the dad is talking to the kid who will become a Nazi leader about why affirmative action is bad, and it is exactly this reason.
Oh my gosh. The thing about help those who really need it, not every Asian American or white is advantaged. Not every Latino or Black is disadvantaged. First of all, we capitalize the B in Black, motherfucker. Second of all, we're not talking about one-offs here. We're talking about we should not see systems level differences when race is a social construct. And so when we're seeing outcomes that are often worse for certain people groups, it's not about you pulling out Oprah and being like, look, you have a Black billionaire, so things must be okay. It's not about you trotting out the people who you want to be your exceptions to the rule and want to use as your tokens. It's about looking overall at systems and saying, why do these systems seem to benefit certain people and disadvantage others? And what should we do about that. And the main way we can do that is not bury our heads in the sand, and we can actually tackle the question head on. So if you harmed people on the basis of race, and then those people who you harmed are still doing worse, you probably need to think about how you address that harm on the basis of race.
Yeah.
Just that simple.
I like how groups against it, like conservatives who like want to hide behind innocuous group names, like Californians for equal rights. And then if you go in and look at who's really funding that, it's like the worst fucking people on earth. Or like students for fair admissions. Like
The thing that's like the most like irritating to me about this shit is like the rebuttals to this are all like, they all start with like this guy, Leo Terrell. I'm a black man, civil rights attorney for 30 years, lifelong Democrat. The next woman is Callie Fontanilla. My father was a Jamaican immigrant, but I was raised in poverty by my single mother. My husband is Mexican, Puerto Rican. Like they just like really go whole hog. I mean, I don't know. Like that sort of a thing is that is
tutored black students in Compton is another quote.
oh,
right.
Oh.
It's fucking despicable.
And now I help Latinos enter UC on merit in all caps. Like, you know, and what's really interesting to me is that these folks who are out here talking about getting into school on merit have never once run a statewide proposition to stop legacy preference. So
That's weird. So I wonder why they aren't upset about that.
Like, if we're talking about merit, then make it so that we can't do, you know, SAT prep and everybody just has to go in and take these, you know, like, or do away with the exams altogether like we've done during the pandemic. Like, if you really want to talk about merit, let's talk about what even constitutes as merit and how we measure it, because all of it was designed as a way to discriminate.
Yeah. I mean, it at least we can all in 2020 look at the Republican Party. I just can't believe that in 1996 well, I guess I can, because California was a fucking awful place back then, apparently. Like, this is the state of Ronald Reagan, the state that was extremely anti-immigrant. And I guess it has come a long way in the last, 2.5 decades. But
I mean, not even that long. I mean, Prop 8 failed in, what was that, 2008?
Yeah. What's Prop 8?
Prop 8 was to legalize same-sex marriage in the state of California.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Like that failed when Obama was elected president. So like,
well, Obama was running on traditional marriage.
Mm-hmm.
It's
traditional
nuts.
marriage was a mainstream Democrat talking point along with the Republicans.
It wasn't until he was in office that he started saying, I think I'm evolving on this.
And I don't believe that for 1 minute.
He already,
I don't think Obama ever did not support same-sex marriage.
Exactly.
I think he said what he needed to say in order to be able to appeal to people to win, because it was literally like 6 minutes after he got in office, and it was like, I've evolved on this. The ink's not even dry on your signature yet, and you're already flipping sides on this.
He's safe for 4 years, so he's like, I'm gonna actually kind of hint at what I really think.
Right.
Okay, so that's a resounding yes on Prop 16.
Yeah. And kudos to the Assembly and Senate and Governor for getting that on the ballot, because that's a really important one. And I actually have been wondering for a long time if we were going to get back to repealing Prop 209, in part because it does hamper a lot of the equity work that people are interested in, since we already talked about Measure A and some of the things like that. There are ways that we can't even describe doing certain work or passing certain legislation because it's illegal to consider the people who were harmed. And I mean, like, when we look at something like the war on drugs and marijuana arrests, and we see like clear racial bias, even though there's no difference in who is using drugs. It's like, there comes a point where you can't try to do restorative justice if you're not willing to call a thing, and speak truth. So it's really helpful to not be hampered by this, false illusion of a colorblind society.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Let's
Prop
push
17.
on. Yeah, Prop 17. I think this is probably another easy one for us, but it restores voting rights after felons have completed their prison terms.
Yes.
So that seems...
Yes, we can.
Like, there's not really an argument against this. This is pretty open and shut, in my opinion.
That would be a fuck yes.
Yes, absolutely. I was trying to remember what the arguments against it were.
Oh, it was something about how it empowers rapists and murderers and shit, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, this is
They don't, while proponents highlight two stories about released criminals, Richard and Andrew, they don't share with you their criminal histories, as if burglars, armed robbers, murderers, and child molesters are all the same. Nothing could be further from the truth. For every Richard or Andrew, there's a Robert or Scott who commits a violent felony while on parole. Can I just stop here and say, I am really glad that we are using these like very, neutral names, because in yesteryear, this would have been for every Richard and Andrew, there's a DeAndre and
right, and a Tyrone.
Right. Okay,
there is
and Mario. Like, so I'm like, at least I'm here for the contrast between Richard and Andrew and Robert and Scott.
When we get to Prop 20, there is a name that they use to like a scary burglar name, and I circled it because I love it. So we'll get there when we get there.
I can't wait.
Also, shout out to Scott Jones for at least putting a white burglar on his, propaganda mailer.
Oh, he has
propaganda
to.
Mailer.
Yeah.
I just really appreciate it.
Yeah, a white burglar who does not understand how crowbars work. What is he doing with that crowbar? Because it's not prying a window open.
He's posing for his stock photo as a burglar.
Oh, by the way, did you hear what CCPOA did the other day?
I think I did, because...
So this is the Correctional Peace Officers Association. Yeah. This is basically all the prison guards in California. And they did a commercial about how they're like, and it's just a bunch of like fat walrus looking white men that are like, we're going to fight for our rights.
Yes.
And they're basically like talking about how they're going to fight against like people trying to make, prisons more transparent and like, basically,
weak. Fuck these guys.
But
what was this? Oh yeah, go ahead.
So what they ended up doing was they showed this one very quick little clip in the commercial of them putting a Post-it with a bullseye on it over a California Assembly member. I cannot remember who it was.
Reggie Jones Sawyer, who is currently the author. I think it's Reggie Jones Sawyer.
Yeah, it is. It is
one of the authors of one of the criminal justice, bills. And and they put a target over his face and are practicing shooting at it.
Yeah. So, and he came out and was just like, "What the hell are you doing?
Excuse me."
And people are very understandably in an uproar over that. But like these prison guard unions, just like the police unions, they have so much like hubris. They have no idea how mad people are at them and how disgusting their behavior is. And they just continue to do stuff like that. Their time's going to come. I really think their time's going to come. So look out, walruses. Like, we're coming for you. But yeah, so 17, that's an obvious yes.
Yeah, 17's easy yes.
Cool.
18.
18.
Yep.
18 would let 17-year-olds vote in primaries if they are going to be 18 by the time that the general happens.
Yep.
There's not really a good argument against this.
Not at all.
This is a pretty easy yes.
In fact, I would love for us to reduce the voting age pretty substantially. I would say, I'd be in favor of 15 or 16, because I honestly feel like if you are potentially going to be enlisting in a service, and this is actually interesting because this is the conversation I had with my mom. So my mom turned 70. We sang her happy birthday back in May. And when she was younger, the legal voting age was 21. And it was only dropped down to 18 because the argument was made that you shouldn't send us off to war if we don't get to vote on the people making those decisions. Absolutely. I very strongly agree with that. I also think that there is a role that young people should be able to have in voting for school board, because those people are making decisions that impact them. And I also think that given that, you know, if you're allowed to sign up for the Army at 18 or whatever, or you know, service at 18,
right.
The people who are already in office before you sign up have a big impact. And so I think you should actually be eligible to vote before you turn 18. So you have a way, at least a couple of years, to be able to shape who's in those offices making those decisions before you join.
And
I think there's really good, you know, a really strong rationale for that. So the more we can do to encourage people to be able to vote earlier, I think the better. And especially because we're often making decisions without young people. And I firmly, you know, support their adage of nothing about us without us.
Agreed. I also think like, so the arguments against this are all like, their brains are not fully developed and they're under all this one-sided influence because they're in schools listening to teachers. They have no real world experience. And for me, I'm like, have you met the average American voter?
Right.
All of those things apply to like a great number of them. We let them vote. Like, why would I not let us, like, yeah, of course 17-year-olds should be able to vote in primaries.
Right. Yeah.
This is such a dumbass argument.
This is another extension of our Secretary of State, Alex Padilla's. Just like he's been doing incredible work ever since he took office, making sure that there is voter enfranchisement in the state of California. We have the highest percentage of registered voters in our state, and something like well over a century or something. And this is sort of an extension of the process that they started of pre-registering 16 and 17-year-olds. And this just started a couple years back. Right. So you're in school, they're talking to you about, you know, registering to vote. It's really exciting. You can actually pre-register, you know, there at school with your teachers or whoever, and you can pick a party. And it's like it's very much a way to address this challenge that our country continuously has with not being able to engage young people. And it's a really good sort of early on, like, hey, you're a part of this. You are in. And so having a rule like this, where it's like, hey, you're going to be able to vote in November. I know you can't vote now. We're going to switch that because we want you to be able to pick, if your person that you pick now in March makes it to November, we want you to be a part of that. It's a no-brainer to me.
Yeah.
It really is. And these arguments against, I mean, they're just so asinine. Like,
yeah, it's so stupid.
It's like, well, science says their brains aren't fully developed. They're not until they're 25. But I don't see any of you arguing that nobody should be able to vote until they're 25. I don't see you arguing that people can't get married until they're 25. I don't hear you arguing that people shouldn't even have licenses until they're 25. Like,
right.
This whole argument about, well, they have restricted licenses at 16 and 17. I was like, so they can drive a whole ass car that could potentially kill people, but you have no problem, you have no problem with that. But here you are wanting to say, because they're in school 5 hours a day, they're under undue influence from their teachers, and so therefore they are incapable of making their own decisions, as if like 18 is some magical threshold. Like, right. I think we forget
where people are like immune to outside influences and start making their own minds up about shit. Yeah, for sure.
It's classic. It's a classic attempt at voter disenfranchisement. You know, Ruth Weiss of the Election Integrity Project, California, down in Santa Clarita, who's backing this, she's probably a Republican. And Republicans know that in our state, teens are only pre-registering to be Republicans at I believe it's like around 14% lately. They are almost at a triple rate registering to be Democrats. And I think somewhere around either that or a little higher or lower to be no party preference, which is always left leaning. So it's like, this is the Republicans, again, trying to push off the death knell when it's already here.
Right.
I mean, just the vulnerable to one-sided influence. I don't know if any of you have watched the Social Dilemma on Netflix. It's a new show out, but like, we're a polarized society already. Being vulnerable to one-sided influence is not something that's unique to young people.
Right.
And I I really just thought this argument of like they have no real world experience. And I was like, fuck it, neither does Donald Trump, and you all let him be president. Like, I'm just like, what is real world experience? Does Donald Trump have experience, applying for a job? No, because
actually, that's a good point.
Like,
that's like true almost bipartisanly across the entire aisle. Like, I think you can make the same argument about like Chuck and Nancy.
Yeah,
like real world experience. What are you fucking talking about?
Have you ever rented a home?
Yeah.
That you didn't buy? Like, just like,
did you ever have to choose between paying your electricity bill or like putting food on the table? That's fucking real world experience.
And they would push back and say, well, they have executive leadership, they have da-da-da. And I'm like, what world is the real world? Because they're real 17-year-olds who have real problems that your real policies are impacting. So that's real enough for me.
But you both know this isn't a good faith argument of theirs. They're just Republicans who don't want fewer Republicans and more Democrats. That's it.
All right.
Oh, I just wanted to say, we didn't talk about this for Prop 17. Flo will actually be speaking on a panel for this.
That's right.
Next week, Thursday, September 24th, I believe it is, at 7 p.m. on Zoom. That's being put on by the Sacramento Change Coalition. And it's a bunch of just like, it's kind of a ragtag group of people that just really care. They don't have backgrounds in politics. And they just decided like, you know what, we want to change the face of criminal justice in Sacramento. We want to get rid of Anne Marie Schubert and Sheriff Jones. And they're starting their project with these panels, one of them being the Prop 17 one that Flo is going to be on. Also, the moderator of the panels will be our friend, Kaim Morton, who was in NELP with me and Flo. So
yes,
that'll be
sweet.
Cool.
Class 7.
Class 7.
Best class ever.
Probably not the last we hear about Kaim in this episode. So Prop 19.
Definitely not. All right, so Prop 19. We are now at our tax assessment and inheritance.
I made so many notes on this one. It took me a while to understand this one.
Yeah, I'm not sure I got all the way there with this one. I wrote, and my only note is vaguely in favor.
So this reminds me of a proposition that was on the ballot previously, and I'm assuming that part of the reason for that is because whatever the provisions in that did not pass, and I didn't have the time before the show to actually look up and see what it was. But essentially, it's really the whole purpose is to change the property tax rules. And my understanding of it is that the goal is to be able to limit the property taxes for people who are older and probably have lower incomes, and that sort of thing. But also limiting the benefits when you transfer between family members,
right?
Which I can raise eyebrows because that's the whole generational like wealth thing where people are able to limit, to limit how much they pay, but it's actually limiting the tax benefits from the transfer. So that's why it's worded in a way that it's like, wait a minute, what does that mean? And you have to think about it, because when I hear transfers between family members, I'm like, let's talk a little bit here about how this could be a loophole. And so, so I think that this one is a good one for us to delve into, Dave, your notes and talk through what specifically each of these provisions mean.
Yeah. Oh, you think I know any of this?
I mean,
So basically it allows a boomer couple, if they have a home that's worth $1 million and they maybe want to move into something smaller, or I guess in California, it's got to be 3 million and you want to move into something smaller. They can actually afford the smaller one because they wouldn't be slammed with the same crazy rate that is at today, right? Because your property tax rate doesn't change until you move out, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And
now
then the moment you buy a new one, you're subject to whatever the property taxes are.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this is supposed to protect people who have lower incomes, right?
Yeah. And if you're older, then it's like, you can't make that change. You're you're handcuffed.
You're stuck where you're
to your
at.
house.
Yeah.
And you may have a house that maybe you no longer can live in because of a disability or because your health is failing, right? Like two stories, all of those kinds of things. The other thing is that I thought was really important provision is about the wildfires. So, I have a colleague, I won't name this person by name, but who's, close to 100-year-old mother just lost her home in the fires that happened recently, right? And so I think we should make a provision that whatever she was paying on that house, she wasn't preparing to sell it. She was just living her, her life in this house, and now it's gone. That if she wants to purchase a new home, she shouldn't be subject to a new tax rate because she had planned her finances and her life around this home that she had that is no longer with us. So
yeah. And then the other side of this bill, I totally agree with you. I think that's a great example. And then the other side of this is it gets rid of that loophole for sort of the transition of wealth from parent to younger person, which I'm all for that. I'm all for a death tax. I'm all for,
same.
Are we really a nation that claims to, pick yourself up by your bootstraps? Then why do we keep allowing these super rich fucking people to just live off of the passive income of their parents, their grandparents, and their great-great-grandparents?
Without at least having to pay their share, right? Like I'm not saying you can't pass money down to your kids. What I'm saying though is that if you're going to pass money down to your kids, they should be taxed on it because they didn't earn it.
Well, and there's also the other implication that's interesting about this is that you go back enough generations with this shit, and there's still people who are born at home base automatically, where that wealth was generated in ways that are no longer legal in this country, right? A lot of that money was made a couple 100 years ago, and that's still benefiting the heirs of people who accumulated a ton of wealth through slavery, because they don't have to pay any taxes on it. It just passes right along. And so it rewards the heirs of that system.
Yep.
I mean, I don't want Elon Musk's child benefiting from, the system that they had in South Africa that his family made millions and millions off of, right?
Yeah.
So I like that part. The thing about Prop 19 that immediately gave me pause, because I was reading through it. I'm like, okay, yeah, I follow. It says, why are we voting on this? And it's like, California's realtors really want this. And I was like, okay, whoa.
Right.
Yeah. It's because, they do stand to make money, right? Because they're going to, you're still buying a home.
They'll be able to sell houses now.
And they'll be able to sell houses. And there's the argument that, older people often won't move from their homes because they don't want to pay a tax bill that's, 30 or 40 years more expensive, right, than the one that they were currently paying. So that's why they're in favor, because it's a boon to business.
Right.
But I think the only thing that gives me pause about it is, the idea that older people could potentially be subject to very, very aggressive marketing by these real estate companies, because I know we've been in our home for a year, and the number of flippers that have reached out to us to say, would you like to sell your home? And I'm like, I know you have access to the records to show that this house, the ink is barely dry on us moving here. Goodness, leave us alone. And even when we were in our other house in Oak Park, the same thing was happening to us constantly, with people coming by and saying, can we buy the house? Can we do this? Can we do that? And it was just like, oh my goodness, leave us alone, and people putting just offers. I don't know, who they're coming from, but it's just we'll give you, at least 20% over whatever your highest ask is. And I'm like, that could be really attractive and could potentially put people in a really bad way. So I do think that since that's already happening, the idea that at least if people did sell their homes and try to move somewhere else, they'd be able to lock in their tax base, makes me feel a little bit better that, somebody's poor little grandma out there is not going to sell her house and then not be able to afford a new one.
Right.
Yeah. So so we're we're yeses on this.
Yeah.
It's a yes. It's
Yeah.
strange
It's a yes.
bedfellows, but it's a yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's always nice to be on the other side against Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. So
All right, let's keep it moving along. Prop 20
Prop 20.
is restricts parole for certain offenses currently considered to be nonviolent. Authorizes felony sentences for certain offenses currently treated only as misdemeanors.
So let's be clear about who is behind this, okay? This is Anne Marie Schubert and Jim Cooper's bill, okay?
Yeah.
They are really upset that
Flo, can you remind us who Anne Marie Schubert and Jim
Anne Marie
Cooper are?
Schubert is the district attorney for Sacramento County, and Jim Cooper is assembly member for District 9 in the California State Assembly. And Jim Cooper is the black cop from Boys in the Hood, in case you need a reference. I mean, not literally, but that if you just watch that scene again, you know all you need to know about Jim Cooper. And so he is in the assembly. He's a former police officer. He ran for sheriff against Scott Jones. And
he's a right-wing Democrat.
He's a right-wing Democrat. And of course, Anne Marie Schubert is currently a no party preference, I think, but up until recently, she was a registered Republican.
She was a Republican until the Sacramento County Democrats kicked council members Steve Hansen and Eric Guerra out of the county party because they both endorsed Anne Marie.
Correct.
So
they both both Anne Marie and her buddy Jim were really upset that Prop 47 passed. And Prop 47 was the proposition in 2014 that decriminalized low-level, non-violent, non-sexual offenses and made what used to be called wobbler felonies. So depending on what you look like, who your family was, and how much money you had, you were either charged with a felony or a misdemeanor. And it made all of them, it classified them all as misdemeanors. So it took out the discretion that was the source of bias, and made it so that a lot of people wouldn't be charged with felonies, which is a really big challenge in terms of people getting jobs. Felony convictions eliminate, I think it is 1,600 licenses that you can get in the state of California. It's a real challenge in terms of just like the way that it destabilizes you and impacts your ability to get student loans and public housing and all of these other things that can be really important for your economic stability. And so that change was championed by all of the social justice warriors. It also created in the process a fund that was to be used to help to compensate victims of crime and other things like that. And so that passed. It's been 6 years, and here they come now saying we don't want that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really what this proposition is about.
Yeah. This is again, it's part of our process towards decarceration in our state.
Right.
And here comes, everyone's favorite villain, just a vile person in Anne Marie Schubert, to try and put more people back in our jail, our county jail, which is among the worst in the nation. And our nation is among the worst in the world as far as jails go. I wrote the words "fuck no" and circled them on my voter guide.
Yeah, this is disgusting. This isn't. I mean, anything where it's like for me, anytime it's like any kind of tough on crime, like we need to crack down kind of shit, is an automatic no for me at the beginning. So this is the one where I was talking about. Remember, we were talking about names and how they were smart and named their bad guys like Andrew and Johnson or something.
Right.
In the last one. So the opening paragraph of the argument in favor of Proposition 20 is an anecdote. Quote, "He slashed at me with a knife and tried to kill me," says Tara Newell, who survived a knife attack by the sociopath Dirty John. "It was brutal and terrifying, but in California, his attack wasn't a violent crime," unquote. The sociopath Dirty John.
Did Scott write this?
For starters, I know like 5 guys who could be considered Dirty John and who are probably also sociopaths.
Are they stabby?
First of all, but that goes on to say, under California law, assault with a deadly weapon is classified as a non-violent offense, along with date rape, selling children for sex, and 19 other clearly violent crimes. That is not only disingenuous, it's like patently false.
Right.
Sentencing laws for violent crimes are clear and strong. People who commit violent crimes receive severe and lengthy sentences, often life in prison. That's not what Prop 20 is about. Like, I'm glad that the rebuttal to the argument in favor just cut straight to the chase, because that's not what's happening. And that's just like a bold face. Like, the one thing I just want to point out to people who are listening is that the arguments in favor or in opposition do not have to be fact-based. And this is part of the problem.
That's a fucking problem.
Whatever they want to about this, and they are not fact checked. As long as you are part of that coalition, you sign it, and that's it, right? So their names are on there. This is Patricia Winskunis and Nina Solorano Besselman and Christine Ward.
I thought you were going to say Patricia Bates, and I was like, oh.
No, but those are the 3 people who signed their names onto this. But let's be very clear here that violent crimes were not part of what was exempted in Prop 47. And so their opening statement is just playing up on people's fears and just a bold-faced lie.
Yeah. Yeah.
For the sake of time, oh, sorry, Dave, go ahead.
I just wanted to say one more thing. The fact that they really, really want to put shoplifters in jail and hold them indefinitely in jail. I mean, again, and I hate to belabor the point, but this is our version of capitalism, and it is dystopic.
Right.
It is placing things, placing capital, placing property over human fucking lives, and it's disgusting.
Well, and it's also an effort in which to enslave people to turn a profit for the state and for the carceral state. Like, it's an easier way to get people wrapped up in that fucking system, to have their freedom taken away in order to generate profit for other folks.
It's absolutely despicable.
And I also want to just share that one of the things that really, I think was an excellent fact, not some made up thing about Dirty John, is that the top shoplifted items, and this was part of what we talked about, in the Prop 47 campaign 6 years ago, the top shoplifted items are not, what we would describe in crimes as a social construct, but crimes of
necessity.
Of necessity. They are often diapers and formula. So if you're stealing diapers and formula, it's not because you're like, ooh, I have a party on Friday night and I'd like
or a dirty sociopath.
This is like, I have kids and these things are incredibly expensive. And of all the things that we support people on, those are the hardest to come by.
Yeah.
And so let's just be really clear about what it means to be talking about criminalizing. And I'm also really glad that, the petty theft, including stealing a bike, is in here, because Sacramento still has the Bait Bites program.
Right.
Scream about it until they get rid of it, because it's completely ridiculous that we have actual bikes available and that instead of giving them out to people who need them for transportation, we put them out as a way to bait people into stealing them by locking them up insecurely and then try to criminalize them on the other hand.
Right. It's horrible.
And you can listen to, I think you can listen. Yeah, you can. It's an active transportation meeting. I'd have to go back and find the date, where the Bait Bikes program actually came, and the officer asked us if we had any bikes over $950 available to donate, because their existing felony bikes had dropped below the threshold to be felonies, and so they could not put them out to catch people stealing a felony level bike anymore, because they had depreciated in value. Yeah. That's how despicable this is. If I had $1,000 bike, let me tell you what I'm not going to do with it is donate it to the police to try to entrap one of my fellow, your Sacramentans. That is completely despicable.
It's horrible. Fuck you, Anne-Marie Schubert. Jim Cooper, fuck you too. California retailers, fuck you too. Prop 21.
I mean, this is an obvious. Yeah, it's an obvious. This is the rent control one. So this just it makes it easier for local governments to enact rent control on
residential properties over 15 years old.
If you listen to this show, you know which way we go on this.
Yeah.
This is a kind of a sister proposition to Measure C, which is Sacramento's rent control. I'm strongly in favor of both for reasons that I've put out on this show 1,000 times.
Yes.
Yeah. Today I was actually on, I don't know if I'm allowed to be on those meetings, but I was, a friend invited me, the Housing Justice Meeting Committee for DSA. And they actually had Jonah from Sac DSA come on and talk about the amazing fight that got Measure C on the ballot here in Sacramento. And like, he really, I think he really laid out to a lot of these activists all over the country, just how many people put how much work into it. And it's really something special that this happened. And Sacramento, I want you to know that like there were people on this call that are willing to mobilize all over the country to get Measure C as well as Prop 21 passed. So there are people working for you to keep you and your friends in their houses, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
I also saw Shanti Singh from San Francisco speak at length on the meeting too. And again, I mean, it's really impressive people doing really tough work. And I just wanted to give them a shout out.
Yeah, I would say too. I mean, you're probably going to get sick of us talking about Measure A and Measure C over the course of the next couple of months because they are important things that are happening in our city. But the fact that we get to vote on Measure C it's a miracle. And miracle is wrong because that kind of takes away the amount of work that like went into making that happen. But it is incredible. Like these guys fought an impossible fight and won in a way that was extremely against the odds. So if you take nothing else away from this, vote on Measure C. It's like vote yes on Measure C. It's a huge gift to us in Sacramento that was given to us by the activists that Dave is talking about, who have worked tirelessly to give us this opportunity.
And I also want to just shout out a key provision of this is, the right of fair financial return, which basically allows landlords to make an amount of money, because that's always been the argument that, if they can't make money, then you're basically, helping out people who are renting at the cost of the landlords. And that's not what this does. Not that I have a problem with us providing housing, because housing to me is a human right, but I also recognize we live under capitalism and some of you aren't there yet. So I just want to point out that is one of the provisions. And I think what's really interesting here is the Legislative Analyst's Office, which is an independent office that just analyzes the impact. They said
apolitical.
Apolitical. They said in their very neutral analysis the following in terms of the likely effects. To avoid rent regulation, some landlords would sell their rental housing to new owners who would live there. That's good. The value of rental housing would decline because potential landlords would not want to pay as much for those properties. Also good because the rent is too damn high. Some renters would spend less on rent and some landlords would receive less rental income. Also good. And some renters would move less often. For example, fewer renters would move because their rent increased. Also good. So right. The independent Legislative Analyst's Office that is apolitical wrote down just their basic read of what the fiscal impacts are going to be. And I am interpreting them through a partisan lens and saying all of those things are good for us.
Yeah.
Fake news.
And these are, both Prop 21 and Measure C. If you're frustrated with the establishment Democrats like we are, they hate them both. Gavin Newsom is against Prop 21. Bernie and progressives all over the country are for it.
Our
entire
city council. Yes, mayor and city council are all against Measure C.
But you know who is now going to be sitting on council in part alongside the push for this? Katie Valenzuela of District 4, because she knows what renters are facing. She herself being a renter.
She's a Sacramento renter.
Correct.
So super exciting. Also, the person who is the Democratic talker against this, Steve Maviglio,
Yes, of course.
America's landlord. I
love this guy.
I have so much on him. We have to do like a Steve Maviglio segment. I'm dying. I'm chomping at the bit. I don't even know if we can fill, if we have a show coming up. We're going to have a Steve Maviglio segment.
All right. Get ready for that one, Steve. That's going to be a fun time.
Prop 21 is definitely a yes.
I love it.
22, Prop 22 is the Lyft and Uber one that we covered pretty extensively when we had Sasha Perigo on.
Mm-hmm. Did I mention that Prop 20, we actually talked about that with Alana Mathews.
Right.
Yes, that's right. When Alana was on, she brought it up. Yep.
Collaborative. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that real quick. But yeah, back to 22. Sasha.
If I'm recalling this correctly, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, this is like basically a last ditch gambit, like an effort by like rideshare app companies like Lyft or Uber or DoorDash or whatnot. It's like a Hail Mary pass by those guys to not have to treat their employees as employees, essentially. Yeah,
basically not treat them as people. And all of this money, hundreds of millions of dollars that they're putting into this fight,
right,
to make sure they don't have to give their employees, their drivers, rights or health care, the things that they need. All of that money could have been going to their drivers, but this is where they're putting it. Right. And that should tell you everything you need to know about Lyft, Uber, and DoorDash.
And it's a whole thing too, where like their whole argument for it is like, if you do this to us, you'll leave us no choice but to just be real evil pieces of shit to all the people who work for us, right? So it's like this like super abusive, like, look, I don't want to have to be an awful jackass to all of my employees, but if you tell me that if you're going to put this thing in place, then I'm going to have to be an awful capitalist piece of shit, and it's going to suck for people who are vulnerable. Right, which is always just kind of like, all right, man. Well, or how about you get fucked and put your hundreds of millions of dollars towards enriching the lives of the people that like make your business run, rather than fucking creating like a fucking whole proposition to like try and get out of having to do that.
I think "Get Fucked" is Skylar's tagline on the show. Like we need like a "Get Fucked" sticker.
It absolutely is, and I just want to point out for something, because I know that this one is going to be controversial, because so many of the drivers for Uber and Lyft, because they were literally like 12 or 24 hours away from pulling out of California. That was their, I'm going to take my ball and go home. And two things I want to point out is that they are basically saying that they're the folks who are participating in their apps are independent contractors and not employees unless they set their hours, require acceptance of specific rides or delivery requests, or restrict working for other companies, none of which they currently do. But when we actually look at like what a contractor does versus an employee, a contractor chooses which clients they work with and how. They decide which services they offer, they set their own prices, and they can be as good or as bad as they want to, and the market decides. So as long as Uber and Lyft are still making people, choose their clients, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, right? Because for, as a Black person who, has historically had trouble hailing cabs, especially if I were with, larger bodied Black men, I really appreciated the fact that these rideshare apps existed and allowed us to be able to get rides no matter what, because of what they were offering. But if you're not allowing people to choose which clients they pick up, if you're not, if you're requiring them to have a certain age car, and yes, it's a safety requirement, but not really, because a car that's 15 years old is not necessarily a safety, hazard. And then if you're setting their rates and prices, that's a job. And if you're kicking drivers off your app that are too low, that's a job firing you for performance issues. Because if you're a contractor, you can be as bad as you want to. I mean,
that's also like a huge proponent of snitch culture, which is not new, but is like really exacerbated by companies like Lyft and Uber. Not to promote other shows on our show, but I don't know if anybody listens to Citations Needed. They have a whole episode about that came out like either today or yesterday. When you're done with this one, give that a listen. Incredible.
this is clearly about workers' rights. And yes, independent contractors should and do exist. Musicians, artists, like those folks are independent contractors. But as far as I'm concerned, from where I sit, Uber and Lyft look like textbook employers. They are, you know, a job dictating your work, a job standardizing the way you do your work, a job setting pay scales, and a job firing an employee for performance issues. That's where I stand. And so unless they can fix those, what they're doing is not independent contract work. If they wanted to do that, what they should have done is set up an app for people who wanted to drive and let them just advertise through their app and not have anything to do with it. Yelp has, nobody thinks that the restaurants on Yelp belong to Yelp. Yelp is just a platform to let you find out about restaurants. They don't set their prices. They don't tell you what you can and cannot do. And they charge these restaurants a fee to be on there. If Uber and Lyft want to be that and not an employer, they need
also
to
Yelp is
like
disgusting,
Yelp.
but that's for
Yelp also sucks.
Absolutely,
real bad.
absolutely. No, I'm just saying in terms of a business model, like that is when you get a bad order from a restaurant on Yelp, you don't go, "Wow, Yelp really failed me," right? Because it's very clear that there's not a relationship between that business and Yelp that they're trying to like standardize the content of.
Flo, that's for another show because
Okay.
I can actually speak to that back from my days at the winery.
So so what you're saying is that Yelp actually is like telling
they will
businesses
work
how
with
to
you
run.
to get rid of bad ratings.
Yeah, Yelp is like will extort businesses and whatnot.
So I just want to be clear. I'm not saying that part. What I'm saying is that yes, they do some unscrupulous things in terms of the reviews and things that exist on their page. What I'm saying though is that in terms of how their business model works with businesses, it's very clear that that's not an employee relationship. That you are not that Yelp is not telling the restaurants cook your food better, or you have to accept a certain number of people. Yeah. That's what I mean by that. So not that they're not involved in some way that makes them want more money, but I'm just saying
there are questions about them doctoring particular ratings for restaurants. So like sometimes it kind of is on Yelp if you get shitty food from something that like, I thought that had good rating.
Okay, that part is fair. I'm really, so I should limit this in terms of Yelp. I was really just talking about the fact that if you are going onto Yelp, you're really clear that you're scrolling through, you're looking at whatever's happening, and you're
Yelp is its own service.
It's its own but you don't think that if you order Chipotle off of Yelp, for example, that Chipotle like has gone through and said, yes, Yelp Chipotle's food is good and it's not good. There are no rats in the place. Like they haven't done that level of thing because they're not really employing Chipotle to be on their platform. Right. I'm just saying like that feels more like an independent contractor, that these are businesses that don't have that kind of relationship versus what Uber and Lyft are doing is a clear employment relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Agree wholeheartedly there.
This one is a fuck no. Yeah. And I also circled that on this one as well. For the sake of time, let's move on to Prop 23. This is another one that like when you look at it.
This is another one that makes me fucking depressed about the state of American healthcare, man. This fucking sucks.
So who wants to try and take a stab at this? Because this one's a little weedy too.
So, like, basically, there's like kidney dialysis clinics that you get sent to if you need kidney dialysis. They're for profit. So basically, this bill like puts a bunch of requirements on those clinics. Like, you need to have a doctor or a nurse or some kind of health professional on hand. Which, I don't know that much about this. I was a little surprised to find out that that's not already how that operates. But okay. There's like a whole bunch of shit. I guess like they've been fudging the numbers on people who get infections at these kidney dialysis sites. And so this bill would like force them to be more transparent about their records of who like gets through their dialysis safely and who doesn't.
Allegedly fudging their numbers. I don't know if.
So it's this whole thing where like, so as far as
sued today,
as far as I understand this, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sure. We're going to get into trouble with big kidney dialysis, which actually is
huge.
Which actually is huge.
This fight happened a couple years ago, and the unions were like, "Hey, you're making all of this money off people's ailments, And that's not okay. And you need to like take care of people better. And they threw millions upon millions. I remember when this fight started, Cap Weekly started getting ads from both directions, and they were like, what the hell is this about? That's really what the fight was all about. It's just like, it's the most disgusting part of the for-profit medical industry,
Right.
trying to maintain their power. And they won the first round, and the union said, we'll be back. And then this is their way of saying like, hey, we're back.
Yeah. So I'm a yes on this. Because I mean, for the same reason as one of the ones previous, where I'm like, the argument against this is the kidney dialysis places being like, well, if it's going to cost us all this money to comply with these new regulations, and we're going to have to like then charge people more for their kidney dialysis, which means that poor people who have kidney problems are going to be shit out of luck, basically, is kind of how that works. To me, anytime somebody who's like an industry that's making this much money off of a thing saying like, well, if we have to do it better than we're doing it now, then we'll turn around and like fuck vulnerable people over. That's not going to fly with me. So I'm a yes on this for that reason.
Yeah, this one is so incredibly complicated because what should have happened is the other one that was on our ballots, I want to say that was is either 16 or 18, should have passed,
Right.
because that one actually limited the medical loss ratio. So there is something called a medical loss ratio, which actually says, that was passed in the Affordable Care Act, so thanks Obama, that said that 80% of the money that you spend on your healthcare premium has to be dedicated to healthcare services. And if it's not, you have to get a refund. And so that's a really good provision because it basically caps the amount of profit that can be made off of what is an essential service. And so that failed. And, you know, lots of folks really tried to kill it. It tried to kill it. It was very confusing. And so this is sort of a revamp of that, but without that piece of it in there. And so what I think it's confusing to many people is that there are a lot of questions about about the cost and how it could be passed on to patients. And that's an unknown. What we do know, though, is that it prohibits the clinics from closing or reducing services without state approval. So they can't just pick up their ball and go home and leave people high and dry because they're not making as much money as they were, which is a good thing. And, you know, I just want to say one of the challenges with dialysis clinics is that they are regulated completely different from other healthcare services. So they weren't subject to the medical loss ratio that everybody else was. And so that last bill, all it was trying to do was just make them have to do what everybody else had to do. Right. It's really interesting to me because DaVita and Fresenius paid for the memberships of a ton of people into the California Medical Association so that they could stack the decks so that CMA came out against that other provision or that other proposition in the past. And what's really interesting to me is that there are a lot of people who are in the healthcare industry who are invested in these dialysis clinics because they're so unregulated and because it's basically just a way to be able to make a ton of money. So to me, that creates a really perverse incentive because instead of your doctors or other healthcare professionals heavily investing in prevention so you don't get diabetes and eventually or develop kidney failure, they sort of have an incentive to be able to send you along and put you on this thing that you're likely going to need for the rest of your life unless you get a transplant, and then they make a ton of money on it.
Yeah.
And those are really perverse incentives to be aligned. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm heavily in favor of regulating these industries. I do share the concerns of people who are wavering on this or feeling, you know, a lean towards no because they're worried about what the cost is going to be because those costs have not been adequately regulated. But we also know that one of the reasons why the costs were so high is because they were not required to have certain medical personnel on site. And so that requirement of having at least one licensed physician is important because what they were doing before was calling 911 anytime anybody had any kind of problem that they should have been able to handle on site because they were unwilling to pay the salary to have the appropriate medical personnel.
That's wild as fuck. I did not know that at all.
Incredible.
That is a really important piece of information.
That's where the first part of that came from is because they weren't weren't willing to make sure you had enough. So, oh, you started bleeding, we got to call 911. Oh, you start like, they were bottom lining their services in a way that was really harmful to patients. And that's where the clinic related infection rate and other things like that is coming from, because there's a question of whether or not they were adequately reporting things out. And if, for example, you were picked up by 911 and taken somewhere else, then does that hospital bear the brunt of that infection rate, as opposed to it being actually attributed to the dialysis center?
Jesus Christ.
So there's some sneaky stuff that DeVita and Fresenius and a couple of the other, but those are the two big ones, have been up to. And so I'm going to be voting yes on this, because I'm hoping that the concerns that are in here will be able to be addressed in other ways. And I think what they're trying to do with this one is really important. And I'm hoping that medical loss ratio and a couple of the other things that failed before will come back as well.
Okay. I believe I too am a yes. I have a little question, and I know we're low on time, but I think we can at least get through one of the final two pretty fast. I look through these and I keep finding that I'm on the other side of a group that historically I have liked, the California NAACP. Can somebody explain to me why that is?
Yes.
I'm going to let Flo take this one.
Yes, I certainly can. So the California NAACP, one of the oldest civil rights organizations in this, in the country, the NAACP is, and certainly for the California chapter is quite long established as well. And so you would expect that would be a place where you could go to get solid equity and social justice recommendations. And you will see frequently that that's not the case. And here is why. The president of the California NAACP is a woman named Alice Huffman, and she also owns a lobbying firm. And what we have found over her 20 plus years—
That sounds like—
that's not any kind of a conflict of interest, right?
And what we have found over her 20 plus years in this role is that when the NAACP takes a position that you think, should the NAACP be backing the big tobacco company, given how predatory they've been in the Black community? That seems like an odd, bedfellows alliance. And then suddenly you find out that Alice Huffman's company has gotten money to run that campaign. And so her standard talking point is always that she doesn't accept money to work on any campaign until the NAACP has taken its position. But somehow the NAACP takes these positions that don't make any fucking sense. So yes, unfortunately, as much as you'd love to be able to look down and say, okay, the NAACP is good on this, that means something, you have to look at it through the lens of, did Alice Huffman's company make money on this, and really question the incentives, because they've been against, I'm saying she, because it really has been her. They've been against rent control. They've been really, and like I said, the tobacco and pharmaceutical companies ones, when they
that's a toughie right there.
Are you serious right now?
That's rough.
Yeah, look with a side eye at things that the California NAACP is supporting, because that conflict of interest is really clear. And I just want to say it is really regrettable, because there are a couple of chapters throughout the state, the local chapters of the NAACP that I think do really good work. Yeah. And I think the challenge of being under the same umbrella and having the same name creates not only confusion, but it also really significantly destroys the reputation of an organization that I've had a lot of respect for over the years, and that I think still at the local level can do good work.
Yeah. Thank you, Flo, for explaining that. Prop 24?
Prop 24.
This is another one.
Prop 24 is a murky one.
Yeah. So, basically, so this one is really, it sort of fashions itself to be a consumer protection one. But then when you look at it and you're like, why am I voting on this? Here's what Cal Matters says. San Francisco real estate developer Alistair McTaggart began advocating for consumer privacy a few years ago after a Google engineer he met at a dinner party told him Americans would be shocked by how much the company knows about us. Also, this is all true. McTaggart successfully pushed the legislature to pass a landmark data privacy law in 2018. This is 2 years ago. Now he says it needs some changes, so he drove the effort to put up Prop 24 on the ballot. So this guy at a dinner party heard that all of these companies have all this information on us, which is correct, we passed this landmark legislation, and now he's like, whoa, I want to put some changes to it. But all of these groups that are like historically very pro, consumer advocates and also pro privacy, are like, no, the things that this guy is pushing for at this point don't seem correct, and this doesn't seem like the time to be doing this. So they're not getting behind it. So it kind of seems like this guy pissed off some of his rich friends, and he's trying to step back a little bit on this.
The thing that stood out to me, and the thing that made my ears prick up and had me go like, wait a minute, is the part of this where the opposition to this is bringing up that part of the language in this bill approves like a privacy tier or something, like some sort of a quote unquote pay for privacy system. I mean, like, as I understand it, and I could be wrong about this, but my understanding of it would be that, like, if you like were to like take, for example, like a service like Google or somebody, you could pay them a certain amount of money in order to have your privacy, but if you don't pay them, then you won't have it. And that is included in this language. And I think it's murky because obviously we all know that our privacy is being violated by like internet companies all the time, and nobody likes it, right? Because it's extremely violating and scary. But I don't like, if the answer is to like pay Google more for them to not spy on you, then I don't know. I don't know if I can get behind that one. That seems not so great to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, when I looked at it, what it comes down to for me is a couple things. One, the ACLU is against it.
Yeah.
Dolores Huerta is against it. Who doesn't love her? Great labor organizer. And then as well, I looked up what the Electronic Frontier Foundation, the EFF, which is really one of the best resources for data privacy online and just on the web out there. They said they do not support it. They're also not against it, but if you're not for or against it, you might as well vote no, because that sort of nullifies the whole thing. On top of that, I mentioned that we would mention him again. Friend of the show, Kaim Morton, wrote a piece in Cal Matters about how this would be harmful to communities of color, I believe, in the state. The piece he wrote is a lot more, I'm not a businessman, so I didn't like fully understand it, but I think I will defer to those three, ACLU, EFF, and our buddy Kaim on this one.
Yeah. I'm totally there as well. I want there to be greater consumer protections, especially because somebody like me says not always do the due diligence I do on other things when it comes to my privacy. I'm like, to click, I need to get into my app. What's going on here, right? And so I'm signing away my rights on a regular basis. And in part because I'm also not a legal expert, so I'm not even sure what those rights mean, right? The few times I've actually tried to do my due diligence, I spent most of the time Googling the terms to make sure I understood what it meant. And so I would love for there to be some standards about what it is so that I'm still able to mindlessly click yes and know that I haven't signed away, the right to my firstborn child or something, right? Like, I'd like that, right? Or for my face to show up, the next campaign will be, I'll be showing up on the Yes on Measure A campaign because I signed the thing on Facebook that said you can take all my photos and sell them to people, right? So I would like for there to be additional protections, but I don't think pay for play is, especially given how vulnerable communities are that have less money, I just don't think that privacy should be something that we are then, treating as a good as part of capital, right? Like that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it sounds like all of us are on the same page where like we all value privacy on the internet do not feel like this proposition is the best way to achieve.
Is working in that direction.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So that's a no.
That's a no.
But I was just like, these are I deeply trust the EFF. They're the ones that got me through my my story in the News and Review, the cover story about the arena following me around with its technology. So, since they saved my life once, I'm going to go with them on this one. Should we move on to the final one?
Yeah, let's do it.
Prop 25. This is the referendum on a law that was already passed. That basically got rid of bail.
Cash bail, yeah.
Cash bail. And what happened was all of these very rich cash bail companies, because people who are very much in need come to them and they end up making gobs of money off of them, threw all of this money to do a Hail Mary to keep cash bail in our state.
Yes.
So it's a little more complicated than that, because there are some human rights groups that are still scared about what this future algorithm method will be.
Yes.
Correct.
But I am also, I lean for it, but I'm willing to be pushed in a different direction if you two have any opinions here.
So I'm a yes on this one. And in part because I was also a yes on the, pretrial release, as opposed to this. I do recognize and certainly, appreciate the argument that, the pretrial system isn't perfect. But you know what certainly isn't perfect? Making it determined based on whether or not you have money, whether or not you get to stay or leave. That is a system that is just going to benefit people who have more money, but not necessarily, look at risk and again, that's reaffirming the criminal justice system. And I do not necessarily support even the idea of how we detain and incarcerate people. But under this system, given that we have not abolished it yet, I don't think that money should be the main driver of whether or not you walk out of the place or not, and how quickly that happens, especially because it puts people in a position where they end up being incarcerated for long periods of time on a pre-trial basis, so they haven't even been convicted, and often are put in a really dangerous situation where they've lost income, potentially lost housing, and things like that. So I want more people to be able to have a process where that's not totally contingent on money.
I'm feel pretty much exactly the same way. A system where rich people get to wait for trial at home and poor people have to do it in jail, sucks. And it has to go. I say that though, I think we all need to really be paying attention to what it gets replaced with and how that algorithm works and what it's looking for and whatnot, because there's a lot of potential for it to be replaced by something that is worse. And so I'm for the abolishment of cash bail, but it is with some not hesitance, but we really, really, really need to stay on top of what it gets replaced with. I think.
What this algorithm will be. And next session, we should have somebody ready day one filing a new law that protects, potential people who've been arrested.
Agreed. I mean, my other thought on this too is just man, honestly, if you make your fucking money by waiting for people to get super fucking jammed up and get into these impossible situations, which are financially ruinous for a lot of the people who are involved in them. If that's how you fucking pay for your mortgage and put food on the table, then get fucked.
Yeah. Hey, Greg Padilla and family, you heard it from Skylar.
Yeah.
Get fucked.
I the other thing I want to say is if we're looking at the entities in favor and in opposition, obviously the California NAACP comes up again, but also the opposition includes, in addition to the NAACP, also the Crime Victims Alliance and United Latinos Vote, which are not the organizations that they sound to be. So the ones in favor of this are Californians for Safety and Justice, which is the organization that does a lot of justice work work and really focuses on, they have a CSSJ program, which is Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice as well. And so that's the group that you actually want to look to for this. The crime victims one has like people in it who are basically trying to be very pro law enforcement,
Right.
pro incarceration, and that sort of thing. And so they're not on the same page, but they're very strategically named. Also, Mental Health America of California. We also have district attorneys that are in favor, both from Contra Costa, as well as there's a retired county chief public defender. And so I think it's really important for us to just recognize like who's there. Also California Legislative Black Caucus and the Western Center on Law and Poverty. And so those are organizations that I trust in this way, in the way that I would love to be able to trust the California NAACP, but clearly we can't. And like I said, and who were working on, many of whom were working on the original bill that this is actually trying to protect against repeal.
Yeah, the one that gave me pause, because I don't want anyone to think that I actually believed that, the California Bail Agents Association or the California Peace Officers Association, was Human Rights Watch. And I think they do a lot of good work. And I was very surprised to see them against it.
Yeah. And Human Rights Watch, like I said, is really concerned about the pretrial risk assessment. They're not concerned about the doing away with cash bail.
What the algorithm will be effectively.
Exactly.
Right.
And Human Rights Watch is 195% correct in saying that we are concerned about the pretrial risk assessment, what that algorithm is going to look like. And they're absolutely correct. That analysis is not wrong.
When we voted for this in 2018, it was
a law. It was
law. It was just passed by the legislature.
But I mean, I don't remember, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember there being any talk of an algorithm. At that point, I think it was just a judge who was going to decide whether or not you got to go home based on your criminal record, right?
There's supposed to be this like algorithm in place, and that it would go to, I think, a judge for approval, and that if you didn't agree with the recommendation of the algorithm, you would be fast tracked into seeing a judge. Okay. So technically, yes, all things that in terms of like the release and stuff have to go through a certain process. And so it wasn't circumventing that, but it was sort of automating that of like, most people were going to be released on their own recognizance and be given a date to come back. And if they weren't, and the DA, or if they were and the DA wanted to oppose, or if they weren't and the DA wanted to, didn't agree with whatever the assessment was, then you would actually be seen before a judge.
Gotcha.
There you have it, folks. That's all of them, all 12 propositions. And I don't know about you two, but I had a blast.
Yo, that was amazing. Yeah, I appreciate you guys doing this with me. I feel a lot better about going into this thing now, and I hope that is true for people listening too.
Definitely.
That was like almost 90 minutes of nonstop perfect takes.
Yeah.
I don't know. That might be like our record for takes that are perfect in a single episode.
Yeah, it could be. I think it was closer to 70 minutes. So we're close to our usual time.
Now, now that I've had a taste of how it feels to have my brain inundated with nonstop perfect takes, I can't let this ride end here, right? I need more. I'm going to need more. I'm dying for it. I'm thirsty for it. Do either of you guys know where I could go to get more perfect takes to like keep my brain on this this wild nightmare ride through perfection land?
Absolutely. I think I've got the answer for that. You know that late scene in the movie Starship Troopers when the big brain bug comes out?
Yes.
And it starts like it puts
and
the
it
straw
stabs that dude in the top of the head and it sucks his brain out.
Sucking his brain out. I found a place that is the inverse of that, where the brain bug will stick its little straw into your skull and just pump you full of perfect takes. And
that sounds amazing. That's exactly what I'm looking for.
Great. That place is called voicesrivercity.com. I almost said perfecttakes.com.
we need to see if that's available.
See if that's there. Yeah. That'll be our Patreon money.
Right.
Play. Voicesrivercity.com. We've been doing Perfect Takes for 3 years. News, arts coverage. We've been doing Truth to Power essays. The SAC Follows the Money Project, which tells you who's paying for what in the political world. Current iteration is a little bit more focused on the podcast, but we're doing more and more in different directions. I'm just so proud of everything that's been happening and everybody that's been a part of it. All of the patrons that have been making this happen. It's just incredible. And this has been so much fun. So, we are also on social media, Voices River City on Facebook, at Voices River City on Twitter, as well as Instagram. Follow the Instagram for hilarious little one minute snippets that Skylar picks every time. Patreon, I mentioned, we are on. That's patreon.com/voicesrivercity. Within the next couple weeks, we're going to have an episode out there for you of Flo giving her take on something very interesting. Am I allowed to share what this is?
No, let's hold off.
Okay.
Okay.
It's going to be really good.
I'm extremely excited about this
over the weekend.
I've been looking forward to it for a long time.
Yeah. And so that'll be really exciting. I guess that's it. You can become a patron for as low as $5 a month. That's a beer at the bar you're not going to right now. And you'll have all of our special episodes. We'll have other special content too, I'm sure, in the future. But this is the stuff that keeps us going. We don't want to do commercials, and your patronage helps us not do that. And we really do want to grow into something sustainable. So thank you for everyone who is helping, and anybody who wants to make this your week. Skylar and I will write you a limerick if you become a patron in the month of September. And yeah, we are all on. No, we're also, there's on YouTube. You can watch a raw version of the show on there, and you get to see our faces. It's always very fun.
Sometimes, like today, there's screen share stuff too that you don't really get unless you're watching us on YouTube. So it's worth it for that.
That's a really good point. Too. Yeah, you'll see those Facebook posts where everyone's commenting like, #dildoco. So that's fun too. And then each of us is on social media ourselves. I would say follow us on Twitter. I am Kempa at YOUKNOWKEMPA.
I'm Guillotine for You. That's Guillotine, the number 4, YOU.
And I am Flojaune, FLOJAUNE. And Shannon is Shan ND Stevens. We miss you, Shannon.
We do miss you. We hope you're having a lovely vacation and are looking forward to completing the podcast crew when you return.
I think she might actually, I think I can convince her to come back for the special episode, because I think she's back tomorrow. So in town, at least.
Oh, nice.
Ooh, all right. Fantastic.
That'll be a treat. All right.
Well, once again, we're going to have to get through this without Shannon. So let's sign off here. Guys, thank you so much for listening to our show. We hope that you found it informative and helpful as you look through your voter guide. We love you. We want you to stay safe.
Stay sane.
Stay healthy.
And stay the fuck away from me.
Yay, we did it!
Yeah, especially if you're a sociopath named Dirty John who's going to fucking come at me with a knife.
That's like half my
Scott
friend
or
group.
a Robert.
Yeah, or an Andrew.
I can't hang out with my poker night crew? Okay.
Or a Dave or a Skylar.
If we get rid of Dirty John, there's going to be a bunch of dudes at poker nights who aren't going to be allowed anymore.
I know. Where will
Dirty
they play
Flo.
Dirty Flo is my alter ego.
That's a few more White Claws in, I think. All right, guys. We will catch you in a couple of days.
All right. Bye, everyone.